There are two digital currencies in the modern world. One of them is attention and the other one is trust. How do you build both of them at the same time? You can say, hey, there's a bomb in this building. All of a sudden I have everybody's attention, but do I gain trust from that? No.
So true. The storytelling and the emotional piece, right?
The emotional piece should not be underestimated because
it's how they digest, but it's also how they pay attention too. It strikes a different chord when it's emotional versus just factual.
How can you achieve both of them at the same time? And my answer to that is
Hi, I'm Brandon Card, founder and CEO at Terzo. I'm here with Jeff Desjardins.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Want to introduce yourself, Jeff?
Jeff Desjardins, the founder and editor-in-chief of Visual Capitalist. I've been doing this now for 13 years. Yeah, excited to be here and excited to talk data with the king of data himself on the enterprise side.
Tell us a little bit about your background and how you came up with the vision for Visual Capitalist when you got started.
So my background was I was working with publicly traded companies and trying to figure out in the digital era how to get them in front of an audience of people that were potential investors, people that could that were interested in that type of asset. Now we take it for granted because all investing and everything is online, obviously on social media and things like that. But 15 years ago, it wasn't as obvious and it wasn't as clear that that's where you'd go for that kind of data and information. And so we were working with these companies, and at the time, there was an initial movement of infographics. I don't know if you remember this, but in 2011, 2012, there was these infographics that would pop up. They were these long form things. They were usually created by graphic designers, not created by business people or for an investor audience, but they would be on these interesting subjects, and you would scroll through them. You'd take 5 minutes and actually read an entire infographic from front to bottom, right, as you would on any other web page. And over time, we iterated and we built the Visual Capitalist brand, obviously, because we needed somewhere to host these things that we were building with these companies. And there was different insights along the way that kind of shaped us into the direction where we're going today. One of the big ones was when we realized we were working with a client and they were like, we don't actually want to talk about ourselves at all. We want to talk about this amazing industry that we're in because a rising tide will lift all boats, and our industry is cool and the trends around it are cool, but our company is just a small, little, tiny part of it, right? And so that was when we realized it's not just about telling the story of a company, it's about putting a company in the context of the amazing trends and the exciting data stories that are happening within the world that everybody needs to know about.
Yep. That's very cool. So that was 15 years ago, basically. You guys got started in this, right? Lots changed, obviously. Social media was just getting big back then, right? That was like when the cloud was starting, right? And SaaS and all those things before people were scrolling on Snapchat and Instagram. How have things evolved since you guys first got started with this client and since you started the company? What has changed where you guys are now?
Yeah, so there was several big step changes along the way. The first one was in 2014, where when we had started working with this company, we were actually very exclusively focused on mining and natural resources as the topic that we covered for the first basically 3 or 4 years of Visual Capitalist.
I don't know.
And so not a lot of people would know this because it was way back. We were super small, but we were focused on,
he might know. He's the only one who might know that. But
yeah, he might know that. He might know that. And so we still have some roots that go back there, which is cool. But yeah, it was stuff on like the gold industry or, this is what's happening with lithium or something like that. And where in 2014, we made the conscious decision, two different things. One, we're not going to just cover that anymore. We're going to cover what's happening in technology, other trends, what's happening in demographics, the trends that are shaping the future of the world that we live in. And basically anything that was kind of like data driven and sort of a mega trend that everything else in society, professionals, investors, those type of people care about. And so we made the conscious decision to start covering everything. And then the other thing we decided was like, now instead of posting whenever we've built a visual, we're committing to posting daily now because we want to build an audience and build a brand. And the only way you can do that is through consistency.
Yes.
And if you just post once every 2 weeks, they're like, where did these guys go?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden,
Pretty much us.
and then all of a sudden you're back again, right?
Yeah.
But we were like, we're committing to posting every single day. And so since 2014, with the exclusion of Sundays, we've posted something every single day since then. So that was one step change.
Yeah. Extremely difficult, by the way. To have content that's relevant every single day and to have that funnel and that pipeline.
Oh, and anyone who's ever like run a blog or something knows how hard it is. You have your first 10 that you do and you're like, all right, that's great. And then you're like, what's the 11th one? And then you start to, it becomes hard, right? You have to, it's kind of like you have to be able to get over the sort of writer's block, whatever that version of it is for you. But yeah, the next step change was COVID, I would say. And COVID is interesting because I remember during COVID going to my people and saying like, this is a big thing that's happening in the world. I'm not sure how it's going to affect us. We're going to try and do our best, blah, blah, blah. And then it actually was the complete inverse of what I thought was going to happen. I was worried about what was going to happen to our business. And then in that year, our business doubled, both in terms of traffic, so eyeballs going to Visual Capitalist, but also in terms of revenue. And what happened was, there was already obviously a shift of eyeballs going online, and like in 2018, 2019, obviously we were all online doing things, but ad spend was not fully happening there yet. People were still using ad dollars in a lot of other places. Yep. And if you think of something like e-commerce, like now I buy everything online, but back then you bought some things online. But so COVID was really a catalyst for a lot of things to really focus there. And then of course you have the pandemic itself, which was interestingly a very data-driven thing, right? You're thinking about flattening the curve, and you're thinking about, you have maps of there's this many cases here and this many cases here, and so it was actually a very interesting series of events from a data storytelling point of view, because it actually helped bring it into the mainstream for us.
Great catalyst.
Yeah, it was this weird.
I remember that because we came on, like, for example, myself, my co-founder, a lot of the Terzo team. Eric just introduced us to Visual Capitalist at the end of 2019.
Right.
So we just got on like, November, December, January, February, and then you guys started coming out with all this cool pandemic related stuff. And we actually got even more hooked on it because every day we were reading about that stuff. So we understood because we just got on before that, as far as readers. Yeah.
And obviously a pandemic is not a great event in and of itself. However, the fact that it stimulated all of this great data storytelling really was, for us, it ended up being a huge difference maker for our business. And I think data literacy in the world has also grown as a result of it. So there are some, silver linings from that. And we did some really cool stuff during the pandemic. And obviously it was a singular focus for us at that time, because that's what everyone was talking about.
Yep.
But I remember we visualized this piece, basically the world's biggest and most deadliest pandemic.
Yeah, I remember that piece. Okay. I shared that piece with everyone. I remember that came out. I was like, this is a cool piece. I didn't even know a lot of the history.
And today, it's our most viewed piece of all time still. When you move towards today, I think having done this for a while, we have a bit more of a philosophy about what we do and why we do it. And like we have a lot more meaning behind data storytelling. And we're kind of like advocates for that. In other places outside of just what we do. We're trying to teach people how to do it. We're trying to explain to people why it's important and that side of things.
You're like the godfather of storytelling with data. And you guys have like unique design, unique style to bring this to life, right? But tell us about this concept. Obviously, you're writing a book on it. You're the thought leader behind this. You've been doing this for 15 years. Based on what we know, you're the leader. You're the first one to come out with this concept of storytelling with data. Tell us about that concept as, people are trying to do this not only in their personal lives, as you mentioned, with the COVID pandemic, but also on the corporate side. This is a huge focus of people, especially in a world where we're overstimulated with data coming from everywhere.
I think where this has gained a lot of meaning is, so when we started, we were just experimenting with stuff, right? We were just trying out things. It wasn't necessarily something that I had built a full passion around. We were just trying to like, oh yeah, this looks cool. And oh, this worked. This got attention. And over time, what we realized, that was the mega trend that was driving what we were doing, is that, and as you know, the amount of data that's in the world is literally, in the next 2.5 years, there'll be more data created than all of humanity.
The last 50 million.
Yeah, all of humanity up until now. That's actually a crazy stat.
It's crazy.
Right? And so if you think of just those, I guess 14 years you've been in business, that means that data has gone up like 6, 7x, whatever the correct amount is there, maybe more than that, 10x.
Yeah.
A lot of data. And so we've been riding this wave of the amount of data that there is increasing. The problem is that the amount of knowledge that people are getting, the amount of insights, the amount of what you're getting from that data has not necessarily increased. In fact, there's scientific evidence that shows that the more information that you have, the more data that you have, the harder it is to make decisions and the harder
to retain the data.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Because it's information overload.
I used to complain about that in high school all the time. Like, you guys want me to go to 9 classes a day. How the hell am I supposed to learn 9 different topics and retain anything?
Exactly.
I should go to 1 or 2 topics a day. I couldn't retain anything because there's too many courses. Like every 40 minutes, you go to a new course. Now it's like, and you're scrolling and you're like, how do I retain? I forgot what I just scrolled through.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And I mean, we all have the attention spans of goldfish to begin with. And
Yep.
and then but then you combine in the fact that there's just so much more out there. And you just run into the problem of, how does any one person make sense of all of this stuff?
Yeah.
And so what we figured out over this period of time and in the middle of this trend is that it's the storytelling. And yes, so I think the visuals are also obviously a key part of it, and it's a key part of how we tell stories, but it's really the storytelling, because that goes back all the way to the beginning of humanity. That's how we've always made sense of things. It's how we've always remembered things.
How we learn.
It's how we learn.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's not about saying, hey, we have all the data. Here's a giant dashboard with 84 different things. It's about, no, you need to look at this one piece of the dashboard, and you need to look at how it evolved over time. Because when you see it over time and you see, this key thing happening, all of a sudden you now remember that story and how you see the context of how it connects into other things. And so yeah, to me, it's all about combining these 3 things that we say are sort of the key parts of data storytelling together, which are simply data, visuals, and the narrative.
The narrative. Yeah. The narrative's the huge piece, right? And one thing that I kind of, I guess, learned while we were building Terzo the last 5 years, and I knew it, a little bit during my experience at these big tech companies, but even more at Terzo, I started realizing that just data alone is not enough for people to actually digest insights and be able to tell the story. Like you said, the narrative. A lot of times you could give like analytics and reporting to people. That's been going on for years, but then they still don't have the story. They see the data, but they have to create the story, right? So why do you think it's so important to actually have the data and the visuals, of course, but to create that narrative around what the data actually means for humans to, be simplified and be able to digest that? That's like the critical piece that I think you guys have really figured out, and that the world is still struggling with, is there's all this data, but what's the narrative around it, and why do we care? Right? That's kind of what I see.
Yeah, and I think it's also an interesting thing to think about, because from a political standpoint, if you try and convince someone about the facts, if you say, oh, well, you're wrong because here are some facts, no one ever looks at you and is like, oh, I've changed my mind about what I was thinking about, right?
Always emotional.
Right. It's always emotional, and there's always, it's always about the stories that we tell ourselves, and, the stories that we obviously pick up and that, you internalize and become a part of us or whatever. Yeah. And so I do think that that's part of it, right? It's like, if you and I are running a business and I'm like, go look at this dashboard, and it's going to change your mind, you're going to be like, I don't know what I'm looking at.
That's right.
And B, some data point is not going to change my mind, because you still have a different internal story. You're thinking about it in a different way. And so this data point doesn't convince you of anything. And so how do you bring it to life so that someone starts thinking about it differently, that they start changing the story that they're telling themselves, and that's what convinces them or gets them interested in solving a certain problem, or whatever action you're trying to get them to take. It's storytelling that I think can lead it there.
Yeah, that's so true. The storytelling and the emotional piece, right?
And the emotional piece should not be underestimated, because
it's how people kind of one, it's how they digest, but it's also how they pay attention too.
Totally.
Right? Strikes a different chord when it's emotional versus just factual. Then
Yes.
you're so right about that. I laugh too because we always talk about, we hit people with facts all the time in our world, right? Similar audience, these executives and finance people, we hit them with facts, and it's like they still sometimes don't care, or it doesn't touch them the same way. But if we hit them with the facts and an emotion, and we say, well, did you know your competitors doing this? Oh, right. Then it's like they pay attention. So that emotional piece, I think, is critical for people to actually, wake up and pay attention. We've had a ton of fun working with your team. Team's fantastic, right? We've been working together for about 6 months now. Done a lot of great pieces, of course, and we're really enjoying it. And, tell us a little bit about the markets in a minute, and, why you and the team think this is a good partnership. Obviously, we think it's a great partnership, but we love that you guys enjoy working with us too. And you've already done a lot of things in this space with the markets in a minute segment. So tell us a little bit about that you guys have done years ago, and then how like Terzo, is kind of incorporating that into our partnership.
Yeah. So Markets in a Minute was a sub brand that was created a few years ago with the idea that we would take what's happening in the real world, mainly from a professional or financial standpoint, and those current events, and create interesting content that ties into those current events and helps people learn in a minute. Something very fast about what's going on, because as you know, everyone, as we just talked about, everyone's getting hit by data left and right and center, and so like just having something that's quick and impactful is a really neat way to be able to, you get a takeaway and you're like, great, I can use this at the water cooler tomorrow. Did you know that 47% of whatever, and so we had created that, and it ended up falling by the wayside essentially a couple years ago. And we thought it was a cool brand and a cool idea, and we've been waiting for the right partner to come and basically take it on again. As I talked about before, the big insight that we had with the very first client that we worked with, or the first one that kind of led to that step change, was that they didn't want to talk about themselves. They want to talk about the trends that were important within their industry. And why did they want to talk about these big trends? Well, it's because it reached the people that they wanted to reach, and it got their name on the tongues of the people that they wanted to be there with. And so Markets in a Minute, because it's touching on the most pertinent topics that your audience cares about, and also our audience cares about, like the reach that we're getting even within our own internal audience is like very high compared to a lot of the other work that we do with clients. And it's because we're touching on all of these amazing topics that are super central to the discourse of what people are talking about, whether it's talking about tariffs or what's happening in the future of manufacturing in the US, or whether it's talking about, we just talked about real estate earlier today. Like all of these things are topics that everyone cares about, and
they're
especially
all trendy and relevant.
And it's what data-driven people in the demographic that you're trying to reach care about. And so being able to do that in such a natural way, and to hit them with really valuable and punchy information, I think is just great, because we could have gone the other route. We could have gone, we could have spent, 24 pieces talking about how great Terzo is. And we could do that.
We could.
But the problem,
we don't want to do that though, honestly, but as much as like we're tempted to do that, but we want to talk about what's going on in the world too, because we believe, just, to your point, our customers are trying to make sense of what's the world's data and what's happening with all these trends and everything, and politics and, supply chain and taxes and inflation. And then they're also trying to make sense of their corporate data, which is a whole other mess of data, right? And endless amounts of data that they're trying to digest and make sense of too. So there's really two different sets of data that our customers are wrestling with. And you have to, one, be extremely intelligent to get through all that data, and two, have a lot of time and not have any other work to do to actually understand that data, right? That's the other challenge too, is that not everyone's a data scientist or has a background like you, or understands like how to even, make sense of this data. It's a lot. It's really unique for us, and, the partnership to be able to have a similar customer, right? We believe that the CFO we're going to pitch Terzo on, and how important their financial data is to them making good decisions, we believe that same CFO is probably waking up and, looking at trends of visual capitalists and sharing that data with their team. So there's just so much natural synergy there that for us, it was like, wow, we couldn't really find a better audience or, a better angle, I'd say, to attack this audience with. So for us, it's been a pleasure, but there's just so much organic synergy. It's fun. It's fun to work on it.
It's definitely fun.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I would say as well is that I think that it's just so important to provide value to the audience that you want to reach, as well as like obviously having a great product and all that stuff is also helpful. But if you're starting to communicate and to try and reach an audience, to provide value in some way before you try and get them to give you something.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, it's just the best way to approach partnerships. And so you guys trying to say, hey, we're gonna, every couple of weeks, we're going to hit you with something that's interesting. That's going to, maybe you can share it with your team. Maybe it's something that gives you an insight.
Yep.
Maybe it's something that helps put the news into context for you.
Yep.
That is a great way to provide value in the sort of fast moving world that we have today.
It is a great way to provide value. And we always talk about it, the founding team, the leadership team, we're always talking about like, how do we provide value to our customers and be trusted partners and just a great resource without just telling them about how great Terzo is, but just being a resourceful, smart group of people to work with. It just helps our customers a lot, right? And we always want to be that trusted advisor. Not that we're going to act like McKinsey or Boston Consulting Group, but they want to know that we have information that's going to be relevant to, other things they have going on. Not just, oh, Terzo can help you in these areas. We want to be more generalists, and we think of ourselves as a broad data company, not just, hey, we can solve this, contract or spend issue. We think of ourselves as
it's multidimensional.
Yeah,
right?
it's multidimensional.
We care about this in every aspect.
Yes, we do.
And that's why, as I said, it's in your culture, right? It's in your blood, basically.
It is in our blood. We're talking about sports data, right? We're like, oh, I know we're not a sports company, but the football season's coming up. Maybe we could figure out because our customers, they care about football.
They care about that too.
We have a team in Atlanta, Georgia. They're huge Georgia Bulldogs guys. They love the SEC, right? We have people NFL Sunday and fantasy football. We know that our customers that are, managing billions of dollars, they love football. So we're like, maybe we could show them some cool data around sports in the football season, right? Totally. Just to provide more value. And we're always thinking about adding value, whether it sells more products or services or not, just for the brand, right? Yeah. And that's the brand we're trying to be. And I laugh at the guys all the time about, we see ourselves, in the future, just doing all types of data, like everything data, right? Powered by Terzo. That's what we envision. And we know there's stepping stones to getting there, but this is a great stepping stone for us to get there. And, I think that there's so many things. There's so many things that you can create out of data, right? There's so many different angles. Me and Eric were laughing this morning because it's like, you can create data out of nothing, right? You just give us a little data set, you can come up with so many different angles around the data. And it just depends on the narrative you're trying to tell, right? So I think that it's been amazing for us to go out there and just focus on that value. And like I said, the real estate piece, that was probably, for me, I don't know about you and your team. I'd love to hear your opinion on what, Jenna and the team thought about the real estate piece. But I would have to say, out of all the pieces we've done so far this year, that the real estate piece about the millennials versus the boomers versus these different generations of homeownership, I think that one for us hit home, per se, the hardest, because it's been such a hot topic. It's been such a controversial topic ever since, COVID started.
100%. And we cover that topic from a multitude of angles on Visual Capitalist as well. We cover, what's the average salary that it takes to buy a home per state, or
$5 million per state.
Yeah,
exactly.
We
ridiculous.
We cover a variety of topics around that area. We know that it always does well. Personally, is something that I feel strongly about. I'm, similar to many of the people working at Terzo. I also live in a big city that has real estate issues in Vancouver, Canada, where all of our friends have all moved away. I'm 40 years old. All of my friends have moved away to smaller places because they couldn't afford to live there. And so, it's a huge, huge problem with ramifications across all of society. And I don't know if the oldest generations, they still don't necessarily get it. I think some of them are starting to get it, but anyone who has, family or kids or anyone else that's sort of working their way into this same ecosystem that we've now been in for a while, they're like, wow, it's kind of hopeless. Like,
Yes.
it's a big challenge.
Even if you're a doctor making $500K a year, you can't afford these shacks. So my parents are like, wait a second, how does this work for the whole country? And I'm like, and finally they got it, because when you watch the news and stuff, you don't really understand it. But when they actually were here, they were like, oh, now I understand what everyone's been complaining about, right? And it's funny, I sent them the piece we did too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, of course. And they were like, oh, this is good, because they had no idea.
Yeah.
Right? They had no idea, because they're not thinking about it, because like, oh, we owned a home for 40 something years. Our generation, all my friends own homes. We're all good.
Yeah, it was easy.
Yeah.
You bought it for nothing, and it appreciated to millions of dollars of value, and it was super easy.
Yeah, it is super easy. Exactly. How are you thinking about, the next few years? We're in this crazy AI world, robotics, crypto, we got a whole new administration here in the United States, which obviously for some people can be good or bad. We're talking about buying Canada. There's craziness all over the place, right? I mean, it's just like, there's a lot of change happening, which I think is good in many ways, but there's just a lot of noise and a lot of chaos out there. And there's a lot of things changing from the media world, as we discussed, right? The media world's kind of getting spun around, and everything's changing with these LLMs. So, what is your vision for the next couple of years, with Visual Capitalist and Voronoi, the app?
Yeah. So the first thing that we did that I think ties into this vision is building Voronoi, which is basically, it's like Visual Capitalist, except it's a platform that allows anybody to post data visualization, like data-driven content, in one place. And that's important for a few reasons. The first and sort of most obvious reason from a strategic point of view is that the reason why media has been a challenging business over the last 10 years is that all of the different platforms that media uses are basically all owned by someone else, and they can set it up to their whims and the algorithm to how they want to use it, right? So
there's like 3 players. The whole space.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Google and Meta, basically.
And so the last player that still exists is Google, but even them now, they're going to get disrupted by LLMs, and so the traditional model of you search for something and then you have this paid search result up above this just isn't going to exist in this way anymore, right? Yeah. And so that's going to there's going to be upheaval for the whole way that that people search and find information. You're not going to go on and look at a website anymore necessarily, right? Yeah. And so so this has just been the evolution of how this has been going for a long time. I think most people thought that this was going to be how the internet would continue to work for quite a while, right? Except in the last couple of years, you're like, wait a minute, that's might not be the case. Mm-hmm. But first it was, something like Facebook was providing tons of organic eyeballs for anyone who would post there. And then, of course, they dialed it back and said, oh, actually, we own this platform. We don't want anyone to leave this platform. We want them to stay on Facebook. Yeah. And then, of course, you do that for Instagram and any of these other platforms. They've all done the same thing. LinkedIn is in the process of doing it right now. And so, what you realize is that you need to own your own platform. You need to be able to own your own platform to be able to change the algorithm in ways that you think is beneficial to your customer or user, right? Rather than have to worry about what other people are doing with it. So that was the first thing. The second thing is just generally speaking, we want to bring Visual Capitalist we want to enable other people to do what we're doing, except for any other topic. What I want is I just want more and more effective data stories, right? That's why Voronoi exists, because it enables other people to do it. Yeah. But for our own internal team, we've created the sort of the philosophy and what I feel makes a good data story. How we get there, I don't necessarily care about it. If we're able to take all of our best practices and all of the great things that we've done 5,000 different original data stories since we began. If we put those all into one AI model and we have our own version of that will allow us to create stuff faster, I'm totally on board with that. Yeah. Because the roles
that's something Terzo can help with.
Yeah, exactly. But the roles of writers and researchers and graphic designers and all these positions that we've historically staffed for a long time, they're all really evolving right now.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm obviously trying to get our team on board with that. But yeah, that's a big thing that we're focused on.
The one thing we always think about is you're pumping out content every day.
Yeah.
And you have 5,000 pieces, but you guys keep the quality consistent. And you said something, you guys are data people, you guys are creators, you guys are artists, really.
Yeah.
And that's a key differentiation in my opinion. You guys have high quality design all the time. How do you keep that consistent? It's difficult, right? Every day. Like, how do you have a strategy when it comes to the people you're hiring, or if you had a team that's been around, that you guys have set this like best practice and standard? Because for us, right, even at Terzo, we talk about this all the time. The quality you guys put out with the colors, the shapes, the little things you do, right? You guys have like, experts in visual psychology or something, right? But you have that edge, I believe. But how do you guys keep that quality with that volume?
Yeah, I think there's a few different things that go into it. I think one of the most interesting decisions that we made early on was that we didn't hire people from a data visualization background.
Mm.
And you would think that we would hire, we have a couple of people that are, have an amazing background in that. However, what we really hired at the beginning was people that were more had traditional design experience, which is like, there's a lot of thinking that is involved with that, right? You have to think about, colors and fonts and layouts and all these different factors, spacing,
things, yeah.
all these things that
Yeah.
make a good, beautiful design, right?
Yeah.
And we got those people to adapt their experience to our form of data storytelling. And so what you get there I think it's a key difference from data visualization historically has been a pretty bland field in my opinion.
Yeah.
I love it, but I also find
There hasn't been much quality.
especially in the social media era
Yeah.
where you have to have something stand out.
Yeah.
I find it to be a little bit like mathy or scientific or like
There's no art to it.
Yeah, there's not
more
much,
ma-
there's
it's-
not much heart.
It's a lot of there's no heart, and we always laugh. It's like what we've noticed too. There's always the blend of art and science, and a lot of people have the science. The MITs and the consulting firms, they've always had the science. They don't have the art. They just don't. That's always the missing piece, right? The art's that intangible that is subjective but extremely valuable. And it's hard to quantify, but that is the piece. Even we were laughing. Was a couple weeks ago. We saw that there were some infographics on X and even Instagram that copycats of VC. But we could just tell little things like the way the colors are, the blends of the colors. It was kind of cheap. They used like these reds and these yellows, not the right color scheme, and the fonts were the spacing wasn't right, and we could just tell it was good, but it wasn't great.
Yeah,
and we noticed that kind of stuff. Right. And it's funny, like guys on our team are like, oh, they didn't use rounded edges. They use squared off edges. It's not a good sign for the designers don't understand. Right. Like stuff like that when we get in the weeds. And I noticed that you guys don't make those mistakes. So I'm like, man, these guys are really attention to detail. And it must be something, either the DNA, the culture, or the processes that you've implemented over the years.
I think that specifically is the difference of having the people that have come from that traditional design experience where they all care about those little details.
What would you say, since you started the company, overall as a CEO, founder, operator, building teams, what is the biggest lesson you've learned personally while going through this 14-year journey?
In the context of it being, so we're what they call revenue funded, which means that bootstrap.
Very rare for most people, especially for us in California. We only know venture backed, right?
Yeah. So now bootstrap is becoming a little bit more like a few more people are focused on it.
Well, now with AI, you can build an app.
AI allows you to build stuff from scratch, right? Whereas 10, 15 years ago, it was really hard. Yeah. And
I was buying hardware back in the day to figure out how to build an e-commerce website.
Yeah, building
server farm
stuff. Yeah. Oh my god, yeah.
Server farm in the parents' basement. It's like that's what it was before Shopify and all that. Yeah.
Exactly. Because I find it's all exciting, right? Like people building amazing companies like super fast. I think that's like so incredible. And I wanted to have that for us. It just wasn't really the path that we ended up going down. And so what you realize when you're doing that is that you also that it's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
It is.
And you have to appropriate your time accordingly to that. I still work very hard, and there's people on my team that work very, very hard, but also we do try and figure out, okay, like working through the weekend isn't going to make an impact on what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
Like you need to take that time and live your life, right?
Yeah.
And so there were periods of time where we were doing a little bit more of that. People were getting burnt out, and I was getting burnt out, and I just,
of course,
I had to readjust the way that I approach how I'm doing this, because the journey is not over yet. It's going to keep going, and you have to be, it has to be sustainable. And
That's
I'm
a
trying to
great
be
point
more,
for other entrepreneurs, by the way.
yes,
Because here's the one thing I see. I see it all the time, and I even battle with it sometimes myself. Because you're around, we're in this environment where there's so much overnight success.
yeah,
There's so much of it, right? These companies are crushing it in a matter of a year or 2 years. Even Lovable or whatever. Lovable's 100 million ARR in like 8 months. It's not even real. It sounds like made up bullshit, right? Because you're like, wait, $100 million in 8 months. These companies have worked for 15 years to build that kind of foundation, and like legit companies, right? And it takes a long time to build a strong foundation with a good team and good customer base, and to slow and steady wins the race, they say. But now all of a sudden, people are like, wait a second, I can build a company and be a billionaire in 2 years, and I can get venture capital and be a hero, and and now it's all about speed. But to your point, I talked to a lot of these founders, and they may build a company really quickly and sell it in call it 2 or 3 years, and then they're empty, lost, confused, not happy, mental health not good, right? Not feeling great. So did they win? I mean, I don't know. It's a tricky thing, because you feel like, oh, I'm on top of the world, and then what? Like, there's no journey. It's like it's over. Then you build something else again, right?
and
So
also, how do you repeat that kind of success again,
yeah,
right?
you fall
probably
off.
will never ever be able to do anything like that again. So
Correct. So there's pros and cons with that too, right? And I try to talk to the team, a lot about this, and enjoying the journey, building a great culture, being healthy and balanced, not always being focused on hitting some certain destination, just enjoying the ride. And if I go out and tell investors right now, or even tell fellow founders, hey, I want to go build a a great company over the next 25 years, they're like, what? 25 years? That's crazy. Well, I'm like, look at all the successful companies that are out there right now, though. Oracle and Microsoft and Apple and Google. These companies are very mature. These companies have been around for 30, 40, 50 years, right? To build this type of brand and credibility, and all the great things they've accomplished. But now people are kind of warped, like, oh, we should be able to do it in a year or two. I just don't think that's realistic, in my opinion. What would your advice be for someone like myself, and that's trying to get better and become an expert in this storytelling with data world?
there are two digital currencies in the modern world, and they're both interchangeable with each other. One of them is attention, and the other one is trust. And so, you can get attention. You can say, "Hey, there's a bomb in this building," and all of a sudden I have everybody's attention. But do I gain trust from that? No, right? I can build your trust. That takes a really long time to do. I can only give you factual information, and I can make sure that's perfectly sourced and whatever. But let's say I do it in a way that I never tell you something interesting, and I never am able to get you're a busy guy. I'm never able to actually get you to pay attention to it. So the question is, how do you build both of them at the same time? And my answer to that is that data storytelling fills that gap, and that you can build trust by being transparent and using good data and sourced from valid sources, and you're transparent about where it comes from, and all these different data hygiene things that we do, and obviously you guys do, and then you visualize it in a way that tells a story that impacts people and that gains people's attention, that keeps their attention, and then you can kind of grow in both different ways. So back to your original question. So that's like my operating system.
Yeah.
What I think about whenever I'm creating any type of data story or when I'm working with my team is like, are we maximizing those two components, right? On the attention side, are we doing all the things that are going to get this seen, all the little tricks that we have? Did we frame it in a way that is compelling? And then on the trust side, is what we're delivering, does that live up to the framing that we created, right? Because sometimes you frame it in a way that's compelling, but then you don't answer your own question, and now you're actually reducing the amount of trust that you have, right? So there's all these little things that go into it, and I basically just ask myself, are we maximizing attention with this based on whatever potential it has, and are we maximizing the amount of trust that we have with this? That's
a great way to break it down.
And if you're doing those two things, you're going to be successful.
Authenticity and trust.
Yeah.
Simple. but impactful.
And so aside from the real estate by generation piece, what would be the next one that stands out to you as something that like hits home to you?
Well, the one that hit home for me, the real estate one obviously hits home, right? That was probably the hottest one just because of all the talk about the real estate stuff we've been discussing. But the inflation one for me was something that really hit home because I've been thinking about this for a long time as a finance economics background, right? As someone who's invested in markets for a long time and trying to understand, this whole Bitcoin crypto world versus this fiat world, and us printing 15 trillion or $20 trillion during COVID and handing out all this free money. And I'm like, okay, this can't be good, right? As far as the dollars, if you have $1 million in cash and you hold it in cash for the next 5 years, like how much money are you really losing, right? And with the stock market, they only tell you the gross gains. Oh, stock market went up 13% this year. Oh, inflation went up 12%. Right. So you really went up 1%. No one's thinking about it like that, really, right? So when we put out that inflation piece, a few of my finance friends and, executive level people were like, I was always wondering, what the real net gains were, because inflation has been off the charts certain years throughout history, even before we were alive, and 70s, 80s, and early 80s. But no one's ever talking about the net gains. They're always just talking about, oh, S&P is up 13%. Everyone's doing great, right? Housing's up 90%. Eggs are up 40%. It's like, are you really making money? Everything's about the net gains. And at Terzo, we're data nerds. So we're always talking about the net gains, right? And the net income and the net dollars.
I was going to say, that's why we also did the piece on net income, which we covered, basically profit versus the bigger numbers, the bigger, fancier numbers like market capitalization that is, all over the news, or even revenue. If you look at revenue, like I don't know Walmart's revenues, but it's probably like
700 billion.
I was thinking 500, 600 billion, but it's also a massive number. Yeah. But then the question is like, how much money do they actually make from that? Yeah. And then that creates a whole different ranking of different types of companies. And some of them are smaller than you would think, but they have really high margins. Yep. And then of course you have these big ones, Amazons or Walmarts of the world that do it in volume, although Amazon does it through AWS. But point being that it's a totally different ranking and a totally different way of looking at it.
Different perspective. Yeah, I enjoyed that one on income too, right? And I think that the tariff one obviously did extremely well because it came out right after the tariff announcement. Timing game was relevant. But I think what hits home, right, is some of those pieces that affect you personally or your family or your friends. And, that's another reason why we have fun doing this, is because it's not just about business and, our companies. It's about sharing with our communities, sharing with our families, sharing with our friends, socializing the pieces. It's just fun, right?
It's get to start a discussion, right? Yeah. You especially like, the real estate one is a great example of like, hey, like just see these data points and then like we should talk about it the next time we get together or whatever, because these are all important
Everyone
issues.
Knows I'm always talking about it, right? I'm always talking about this is a scam, right? This isn't true, or you got lied to. It's funny though, because it is important to people, and these are decisions they're trying to make, and people are already thinking about this stuff. So it's nice to give, to contribute quality data and content to topics that people are already having.
Yeah, and one other thing that I would add as well, and this is kind of how we think about Visual Capitalists or Voronoi from like a broader user perspective as well, is so we try not to infuse our opinion on anything from like a overtly biased point of view. Like, you should believe this, or you should think this, or anything like that.
You're not like CNN.
Or this is one side of the story, right? And what we want is to create something that we can put in front of someone, basically anyone from any persuasion, and use it as a conversation starter that helps that, because everything is factual and driven by data that comes from a valid source, and we're transparent about where it comes from and all those kind of things, right? And you can use it as a way to look at it and then kind of use it as a sounding board to see about what you think about the world and what you think about this issue or whatever. But it's not meant to be necessarily provocative in any way. It's just meant to get thoughts going and conversations started and things like that, right? And I think I've always felt super passionate about. I think the world is so divided and polarized. And I think data and data storytelling is a way to help heal that, because you can say, here's the data about this thing. This is where it comes from. You can't really change that. It doesn't matter what your story is, whatever your persuasion is, but this is the way it is. This is the inflation data. It is what it is. And
not the Joe Biden inflation data. It's the inflation data, right? So.
But yeah, I mean, I just think that it's so important to be able to put something in front of people that's thoughtful and like all the pieces that we've done together, and to use those as conversation starters. And
we have fun doing
both personal and professionally.
We think about it all the time, honestly. You laugh, but we're in some executive meetings on Fridays or Mondays, and Eric and I will talk about it and be like, oh, what's the next VC piece we're doing? And then someone's also on the team like, wait, what's the next piece we're working on? Like, people are interested. It's a fun project, right? It's something that, we're always in the trenches doing Terzo work and, working on software, building new software, solving complex data problems. And we're like, this is kind of a fun thing we can jump out and do, right? It's enjoyment for the team. It's like almost like a camaraderie thing too, to get the group on. And we invite some people on the calls, some of our sales leaders like Spencer, and these guys want to contribute, and some of our designers get on, and it's just good for the company, right? It's a healthy activity for us. So we really enjoy it. Jeff, we covered a lot of good topics today. Could talk for many more hours. Thank God we have dinner tonight. But thanks for coming by. Thanks for telling us a lot about this backstory and everything you guys have accomplished at Visual Capitalist. And congratulations to you and the team. And I want to say thank you for coming, and thank you to the Visual Capitalist team for the collaboration and everything we've done together. And we're excited about the future and doing more together.
Thank you so much for having me here, and we couldn't think of a better partner to be working with.
Thank you very much.
This is awesome. Yeah, cheers.
Thank you.